All right, hello everyone. Welcome to a special episode of Gonzo Film Reviews. I have a interview today with Daniel Hess. He is an author, and I'm going to let him introduce himself, give some background about his early life and what he's been working on, so that you guys all know basically the reason I invited him on. So I'll let you take it away, man.
Hey everybody, my name is Daniel Hess. I am an author and a filmmaker based in Baltimore, Maryland. Born and raised here, and just been trying to live life and be creative despite, struggles, setbacks, all that good stuff. And yeah, that's just me in a very, very brief nutshell.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
hmm
One of the things I wanted to know too is what was it like for you growing up? Were you in Baltimore your whole life?
Yeah, so growing up for me was interesting. I say Baltimore, but Baltimore is really kind of a catch-all. Where I'm specifically at is called a place called Sparrows Point or Edgemere. It's weird. There's like different names for it, but it's basically the same area, and it's a very blue collar kind of place. It actually kind of only exists because there was a steel plant here once upon a time. So everyone who worked at the steel plant kind of just moved in because it was close and easy to get to work. And my grandfather, that's why he came down here with my grandmother and aunts and uncles and stuff, because he worked at Sparrows Point Steel Mill. And so that's kind of, where the area came from. But it was kind of a good and a bad thing. I mean, on one hand, it's a very quiet area. You're on the water, it's nice. But on the other hand, you do have this very rooted blue collar kind of community. So being someone from more of a creative background has always been kind of a struggle just in the area itself, because there's just not a lot of people that are in that field. And especially for me, like with my family, I'm the first one that's kind of gone into an art field, has more of a creative approach to life. So as you can imagine, like over the years, even when we have the family all together, conversations can be pretty tough because it's like, I'm somebody that doesn't have the traditional 9 to 5. Like it seems like it kind of escapes them sometimes, like the strange kind of life that you lead when you're a video maker and a freelance, filmmaker and also a writer. Um, but growing up, like, our family was always really close. So I was really close with my cousin, um, who happened to have cystic fibrosis. And as we sort of grew up and stuff, we were really close friends. And unfortunately, like as he got older, the cystic fibrosis conditions that he dealt with were only kind of getting worse. And right around when he was 14, it was like right before the school year was out, he ended up going into the hospital, and he was in a coma for quite a long time. And we were kind of, going every day to visit and just really hoping for the best. But unfortunately, he ended up passing away. It was really like I remember the funeral and just going through all of that, and it was only 10 days before my 11th birthday, so I was 10 at the time when all of this happened. So I always kind of tell people that this was the moment where like childhood sort of ended for me. you know, um, it was really a tough thing to have to see and realize, like, that you do have this mortality, and it doesn't really escape anybody, no matter their age. Um, and so that had a huge impact on my creativity and the types of creativity that sort of flowed out from there. A lot of it was trying to kind of escape from what was going on, and it became sort of like a home away from home. It was like if I didn't want to communicate with anybody or kind of wanted to stay reserved, I had this outlet that I could create stories in my mind, or these different scenarios, and just kind of let it all play out. And between that and dealing with my own kind of health conditions, being born with heart condition that sort of prevented me from doing too many things physically, especially as I got older, really kind of pushed me into a more academic type of range and a more creative type of range. Because being in this small community where a lot of it is focused on sports and things, which I couldn't do, it really pushed me further into that realm and sort of shaped who I am in a major way at a young age.
Yeah, I'm sorry you had to go through that. There's a lot of pain in there, and there was one of your poems that I really liked was called "Scare Me," and some of the passages from that were, "I want something to terrify me, a pinch in the night, a whisper in the dark. At least it would be a feeling and a way to have some emotion." So a lot of your writing seems like it comes from a place of, you know, pain, but also dealing with the pain, finding ways to handle it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's interesting that like the writing has, it started as a place of catharsis and it sort of continually becomes that for me. So like with my poetry collection, that was really like from age about 24, 25, I just started kind of writing on my phone's notepad when I had these like, I call them like little flashbulb moments, where I was maybe in a situation or thinking or reflecting on something, and I would just, grab my phone and just write out a couple lines of a poem, and then I'd have something. And honestly, like, for a long time, it was something that I didn't even know what I was really doing with. Um, and I've unfortunately had this habit throughout my life of like having these creative explosions and then getting all this material and it just disappearing. So unfortunately, as much as I wish I had a lot of this stuff that I wrote when I was younger and when I was in my teenage years, it's all sort of gone away. Because like I would constantly go through the struggle of really feeling confident and like writing everything out, but then losing all of that confidence, feeling like it was kind of aimless what I was doing, and then just kind of getting rid of things. So really what the phone allowed me to do was to not have that option. It just was always there in like the ether. So that sort of helped me along the way to collect all of these things to finally make something out of it.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I can't tell you how many things I've thrown away. Um, it's it's definitely a big problem, especially for people who aren't professional writers, but they really want to write something. Is the
Mm-hmm.
confidence issue? So they throw things out, or they don't take opportunities that, in hindsight, they probably should have taken because they could have maybe refined it to the point. So how did you get to the finish line, even though you had that habit of throwing things away?
So really what kind of kept happening over the years was, I would write these things out and occasionally I would share them with like friends and stuff like that. And as time went on, I had more and more people kind of saying like, this is good, like you're writing good stuff, maybe you should think about doing something with it. And again, it was that like disconnect of saying like, well, what exactly do I do with this? And just kind of feeling overwhelmed too. So it was like the first step was the confidence. The next step was feeling very overwhelmed because I'm just like, I have all these poems on my phone. How do I get them onto a page? And then even when I do that, how am I going to make sure there's no errors in things? How am I going to make sure that it's formatted right for print? Like, you really start breaking it down and it kind of turns into this like, oh man, how am I going to do all this? And you feel so overwhelmed that again you just kind of want to give up. And so even after kind of getting to this mental point where I was like, okay, I need to put this into a book, it was still, wow, how is this even going to be like a possible thing? So what I'd say I've gotten a lot better with over the years is just kind of having that little bit of discipline to say, okay, it's just about breaking things down. So, step one was writing it all out. So I had a day where I just sat with my phone and typed everything into a big giant Word document. And so I was like, okay, we got that, and then the next step was, okay, how do we get it looked at? And I had a friend that I connected with who does editing, so I reached out to him and then let him take some time with it, give me notes, all that good stuff. And then after that, it was, okay, how am I going to take this and format it? And, thank goodness for things like Google and just being able to search around for that kind of stuff, because I was able to find a person who could help with the formatting and help with like the cover layout and all that stuff. And then it really just became a matter of, okay, I have all of these materials now. It's just a matter of getting them onto a platform, like what you have with self-publishing. So then it was researching, how the Amazon Kindle program works and Ingram Spark. And those were kind of the two areas that I went in. And, from there, it's just really copy and pasting files, looking through things as a proof, and then, having something that's ready to print. But that's the way that it had to go down. There's no other way I was going to get through all of that unless I would have had the time and the energy to say, step by step, here's what we're going to do. And a big part of that was honestly dealing with everything with the pandemic and stuff like that, and having that extra time to not have an easy excuse to say, well, I just don't have time for that, because all of that time was then there. So, the combination of that, the combination of the discipline, and just really kind of sitting down and just telling yourself, like, this is possible. Let's just not get overwhelmed with this whole situation. Because, like I said, I know a lot of people that have contacted me since that have wanted to, self-publish, and I'll give them every piece of advice I can, every website to check out, and most people still don't get to that finish line. And a lot of that, I think, is to do with, like, feeling a lack of confidence and then also getting overwhelmed. But both those barriers can be achieved. It's just a matter of, maybe confiding in someone and saying, like, hey, like, I'm kind of questioning this. What do you think? Do you like what I'm doing? And, if that feedback is a positive one, or even if it's a negative one, just continuing to move forward. Like you had kind of mentioned, like, it's refining. If, a lot of the feedback is like, okay, this is good, but here's where you might be able to improve it. And then just saying, this whole process of self-publishing is not as complex as it might seem. There's a lot of resources that I can utilize and use, and that can help me sort of get this book made and out into the public eye,
Yeah, self-publishing, it's really two things. It's self-discipline, and then it's also, you need a complete idea. So you need a full story, because I've found a lot of times, most of my self-publishing ideas, that's what they were. They were just ideas. Like, oh, this would be a cool story. I would set up the page for it. Yeah, I'd never finish the word. So it really is all about the discipline to finish something and having a complete idea. And your books were complete ideas. I read, especially the poetry one. It's full. Like, there are a lot of pages in there, and they're not just filler. Like, they're very good. So I would say that it really is just about the discipline to try and finish what you're doing and have a complete idea.
Exactly. And a lot of that is like, also outlining too. So, like for the novel, it's like Focus Puller is kind of more vignettes and things like that. But even that, I kind of went in with that thought process of like, okay, these are sort of the memories that I've experienced that I sort of want to express and kind of put onto a page. And that's a huge part of it, because I think a lot of people, like you kind of mentioned, it's just you have this idea and you instantly want to just be able to like write everything out. And no matter how great the idea is, it's just kind of I don't know, maybe there's like somebody out there that's just like this phenom and can do that, but I know me personally, it's like even with solid ideas, I still need to have a structure, an outline, and then really flexibility because like even though you might have a really solid outline, like as you kind of go, things are probably going to change. Like one scenario that you might have in your head when you then go to write it out kind of might just not play out the way you wanted it to or envisioned it. So you have to have that kind of flexibility to say, okay, this scene or this exchange might be a little like strange or it might be a little cheesy or just whatever it is, just kind of processing that and then kind of going back again and being flexible like that. But I think that's the biggest, to me, that's probably the biggest part of writing is just flexibility and also, the criticism part. Like, you really do have to take everything in that comes in from others and, for one, be able to parse through it because honestly, there are people that are just, they might be very vocal, but their ideas might not be the best. But then there are people that'll come to you and like have amazing ideas. Like for my novel, the original title was like completely different from what it ended up being, but that actually came from an exchange I had with a fellow writer who had read through the novel and was like, I love it. It's just that title does not work. And I was like struggling with it because even in my head, I was like, I'm not 100% in with this title. And they kind of gave the suggestion of like, well, it's about this person who does film work and everything. Why don't you try to think maybe in terms of that? And that's sort of where focus puller came from because, in film, that is a position someone is pulling focus. So, in the book, it's like you get these different memories. So it's like the narrator is sort of pulling focus between all these different events that makes one person. And essentially, that's all the book kind of boils down to is like it's a pretty extreme character study told from a narrator, but then also told from people that have been involved in this person's life at different stages of his life. So it's an interesting study in that regard. But yeah, that all came from being flexible and understanding when you get an amazing note, when you get maybe an okay note, and just being able to understand how all of that can shape what you're doing to make it better because nobody has every point, nobody has every idea fully formed. Sometimes it takes that outside eye to come in and just say, hey, maybe think about this, and next thing you know, you might have like the most amazing chapter or the most amazing title that you didn't think you were going to have before.
Yeah, I love that title. It's because it can appeal to people who both know and don't know about film. So the filmmakers will know, like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of cool. It's like an inside joke, but then it just also sounds catchy, to people who aren't as well versed in the background details about how people make films.
Yeah,
And that's
exactly.
a good pivot too. I did want to talk about as well your filmmaking. Like, what have you done so far, and what do you hope to achieve as well with your filmmaking?
Yeah, so far in my career, I've done kind of several short films over the years. When I first got out of college, I did a senior thesis film that was pretty well received. It got into a number of film festivals, including one as far as Greece at the time. That was around 2012. So that was a really cool thing to kind of accomplish. And then from there, it sort of turned into film is like more of a business endeavor. I kind of moved out from my parents' place. Money became a thing that was needed. So I was doing actually wedding videography for a very long time and built up a pretty solid business out of that. Got me to a good place. And then I kind of realized that the creativity just wasn't there. Over the years in between, I kind of had done some like music videos that were a lot of fun and kind of helped out with my learning of like looking over productions and all that stuff. But then finally in like 2018 into 2019, I did my first like bigger short film, which was like a 20-minute piece. Um, that again got into numerous film festivals, even got like an audience choice at one of the film festivals, which was pretty cool. And then from there, I sort of took a step back again from doing shorts, and over the course of everything again with the pandemic, I started writing my first feature film, which to this day it's complete now, and I'm actually actively working to get that one into production. And I have another feature film script that I wrote that is slated to be done in fully stop motion animation, which I have a few producers that are based in the UK working with me on. Um, so both those projects are kind of moving forward, but just as everything with the film world, moving forward very slowly. I didn't do myself any favors by writing one film that is a very dramatic, dark film that takes place in the early 90s. So it's a period piece in the indie scene, which is, always hard to produce. And then the other one is a horror film that takes place during World War One, but it is stop motion. So it's like lots of interest, but the second the stop motion piece comes in, most producers just aren't familiar with that territory. So it's a lot of, if I knew it, like I'd be on board in a heartbeat, but unfortunately that's just not my forte. So it's been a cool process to kind of get to know how the animation will all work, how the character designs will all work, and kind of keep things going from there. So on the film side, that's sort of where it's at right now. And then the last project I have is associate producing a horror film that is going to be shot in LA over this coming summer, if everything goes according to plan. That one has been fully financed and everything, so it'll be my first time in LA, and then it'll be the first time working on it's still low budget, but a full feature horror film. So really excited for that to be coming up. So yeah, that's all the stuff that's kind of on the horizon.
Awesome, congratulations. I mean, especially the
Thanks, man.
stop motion idea. Those are so hard to fully realize. And, what was the last one that was really major? Is like Shaun the Sheep, the Pirates Band of Misfits, like Wallace and Gromit. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there just aren't a lot of stop motion studios. I mean, it's really cool. I hope it gets fully realized, and I would look forward to seeing it. That sounds
Yeah,
really
man.
cool.
Yeah, it's definitely getting there. It's that one's been exciting. But yeah, it is. It's like even once we get to the financing piece, it's still you're like a year out from production because it just takes so long to do the animation. And in the story as it's written right now, it certainly isn't skimping on the set pieces and the action and the bloodiness of it all. So it'll be cool. I mean, yeah, if it does get realized, it will legitimately be the first ever stop motion horror period piece. So, if nothing else, I can, say if this gets made, it'll be the first of its kind, at least in that regard, which is kind of exciting to think about, that nobody has really done a full feature horror period film up until this point. So, yeah, really excited for that one.
That's one for the Guinness World Record books. That's
That's what I'm
impressive.
saying. That's what I mean. It'll just be really, really interesting to like at least have that. Like if nothing else, I'll be able to say, hey, I helped make this first thing happen, and it's one of those things that'll be interesting to see what happens because I feel like it'll either be a cult film that just it like does really terribly at the box office and it just turns into a purely cult film that like catches on as the years go by, or it could be one of those things that like really helps bring into focus more like horror animation and more like adult animation in general kind of coming more into the public consciousness. um, sort of like what happened kind of with how Paranormal Activity was that film that really showed like in addition to Blair Witch was kind of the precursor to that, but that whole you know you can make this horror film that just has this original thought behind it, but doesn't have to be big budget, and it can just explode in popularity. So my dreamer inside would say, hopefully it takes that trajectory where it's like, wow, this film came out, did really well, and then all of a sudden we got all this influx of like horror animation that people were kind of like really into, or something like that. So that's my dreamer cap coming on.
Well, that would be ideal. I mean, most animation for adults is geared towards comedy, like Robot Chicken,
Mm-hmm.
Family Guy kind of stuff. There isn't a lot of serious adult animation. People kind of just go there for the jokes and the kind of adult humor you can't do with a lot on TV with a lot of live action.
Exactly.
And they go there for the slapstick and the violent humor and stuff. But it would be really cool to see something serious done with stop motion. That would be a first. It would be new, and it would be exciting to see. It definitely would be an innovation, and I think it's
Yeah.
really cool. Did you see yourself as a kid? Did you see yourself ever getting to the point where you felt like you were going to be an innovator in the genre?
I mean, growing up for me, like I was always into the old school like Godzilla movies. I can remember just sitting there with like all the VHS tapes that I could find, um, that had like Godzilla versus Mothra, Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, like all of those kind of cheesy films from back in the day, and I love that because it was like it was for me able to like open up this imagination. So kind of before losing my cousin and friend to cystic fibrosis and all that, it was like this fun childhood kind of exercise that I would do of making up different stories of Godzilla versus some other monster that I would sort of create in my mind. And so I always had this like hope, I guess, that something like that, like I'd be able to make something like that happen. I just never felt like it was even feasible. Like that was the crazy thing, is like it really wasn't until like I had my really close friend in high school who was also into film and he was going to school for that, that I felt like, okay, this is like a track you can take in life. This is something you can do. Because I was kind of just so innately taught to just focus on like what's going to be the path that is going to, make money, that you can just have this easy sort of life of making enough to buy a house, have a car, all the cookie cutter stuff. And so film didn't really register, writing didn't really register. And so it's just taken me a long time. But to really kind of get to the heart of that, I think, yes, like even growing up, I felt like I wanted to accomplish bigger things in my life. I just never felt strong enough or felt confident enough to be able to do that. And it really hasn't been until these last like 4 or 5 years that I've kind of sat myself down and said, like, look, this is what your dreams are. This is what you've always wanted to do. Let's just kind of try to make this happen. And it's work. Like, that's the thing I think is the other side of the coin for a lot of people out there that are trying to write or trying to get their name out there with writing or things like that, is it's just you're just constantly doing things. You're constantly, writing is really, it's, if you had a pie chart of the creative like endeavors, I always say like writing is that little sliver that you just kind of sit down and you have fun, and then the rest of it is like all like either business or networking or just like every other layer of the pie that comes into play. And so I think that's the disconnect for a lot of people I meet, is like they see me and they say, "Oh, it's so cool that you're writing and it's so cool that like you're able to do this." And I'm just like, "Yes, I would totally agree with that hands down, but like that is just the very smallest piece of it. The rest of it is just kind of so key, but that is where like to me the actual work part of it comes in, because writing is just fun. Like when I just sit down at night and I'm just tapping away on a laptop, like I'm in, that's cloud nine. the rest of it is like, you have to narrow in to what demographics you're thinking about, like getting into, or who you're trying to talk to, appeal to, all these little nuanced things that sort of come with it, especially when you're trying to do the route of like self-publishing and building up a name recognition and reaching out to studios and executive producers and directors. It's like, you just have to be all of those other things, all of those, that personable person that's networking and doing all that outreach.
Yeah, it is a lot. People tell one of the number one things I hear from people who are in the industry or trying
Mm-hmm.
to get into it is that it's not, glamorous. There definitely is a lot of work. You have to put yourself out there. You have to take a lot of risk. You have to ask a ton of people to read your thing. Read the
Yep.
script. Please look at this thing. It's a pitch. It's a whole beautifully packaged pitch, and you have to tie it with a very pretty bow.
Yep.
You don't just put your script up on flagpoles and just expect the biggest studio to grab it and
Mm-hmm.
golden light pours from the pages. Like, no, you really have to tell people why they should invest their money into your specific project, into your vision of a certain story. And so it is a lot of work from what I hear. And, that's part of the reason why a lot of people probably find it to be a really big grind, more so than they expected.
Yeah, I would say 110%. Like, one of the biggest things I've tried to watch out for over the years is, every now and again I'll get people kind of reaching out that are coming right out of film school and stuff. And, I'll just tell them that, like, you really just have to, like, kind of take those risks now, because, like, I feel like my kind of path that I ended up taking, and what I kind of would feel like, it's not something I regret, but it's, that fear of just going to a new area to try to network better and things like that. Like, I had a very, like, a number of people I knew that kind of went out to LA immediately after film school and were able to get in with studios and stuff like that. And, even now are still kind of working out in that region. But for me, it was like, you'd also hear those stories of people who would go out there and just not find success, and it would just be really tough, and they would end up coming back because they just couldn't, get any traction or anything. So, as much as the one side of my head was always like, look, like, this is what we got to do. Like, we just got to go out there. There was that other side that was like, well, we can do that, but do we really have like everything lined up? Do we have, a place to stay? Like, all of these factors that sort of played into it. And so that's always sort of kept me from taking the 110% dive that, like I said, if I feel like I would have, maybe things would be a little bit different. But, I'm also at this stage in my life, and I'm very content with where I am. And I feel like, even despite that, the timing has sort of worked out pretty perfectly, out of probably pure luck, that, we do now live in this time where Zoom meetings and virtual and all this stuff have just become so commonplace that really area doesn't matter as much as it used to. As long as you're, still kind of doing the outreach and meeting people virtually and staying in contact with them and all of those things, you can still kind of keep building those pieces up. And I feel like that's kind of been my, like, subconscious mission, is to kind of like show that to a lot of people that, are out there kind of trying to figure out like how to make it in the industry and stuff like that. um, because I've talked to many producers that are, in that same boat where they're just saying, look, like, you can go out to LA and sure, you, if you know how to network and stuff, it's going to be great. But on the flip side, like, you can just do this thing virtually. You just have to be aware of time zone differences and little things like that. But, here I am having conversations with producers in the UK about a film I'm working on, and then in the same breath, like talking to people in LA about the project, and then talking to financiers that are like based in the Southeast Asia region. It's like, so all of these things that you used to kind of have to be very mobile and go to do all this stuff has really kind of trickled down to, hey, what time works for you? Get a calendar invite, and then we're off to the races. So the industry has really sort of grown and developed, as I feel like most have, as a result of like, everything that we've kind of been facing the last couple years.
Yeah, the technology is really in a place now where you might as well. You might as well do it this way because
Mm-hmm.
it honestly also gives people more time because now you can have more meetings per day than you would have if you had to actually go out to LA to meet with people about one film that might not even see the other side of the camera. So, you
Exactly.
wasted all that time and the travel and everything. So, honestly, I think this is the best way they could have done it. Um, the best way they could do a lot of these meetings is online anyway. So, the
Yeah.
technological benefit actually it probably gives you more opportunities and it probably gives you more projects that might see the light of day.
Yeah, I mean, what really has kind of happened is, especially with the industry, is like twofold. One, you have this bigger democratization of the industry in that, the technology has grown so fast that, I've seen great short films that were shot with somebody's iPhone at this point. So the barrier to entry is nowhere near what it used to be. Even when I started film school back in 2008, we still had cameras that had the HD, like the HDV tapes that you would have to transfer digitally. And the only way you would transfer an HDV tape was you'd have to sit there with the deck and just play back everything you shot and digitize it, and then you could start editing. So if you shot like an hour and a half of footage, you had to sit there for an hour and a half as the footage all logged into the computer. Um, and that was 2008, which even then I was kind of like a little bit behind with where we were technology wise, but just the amount of growth that we've been able to take with that, and just the ability to do it has really opened the floodgates on who can create, where these stories can come from, which is amazing. The flip side of that is, of course, now you have the network of people has just grown so dramatically that it makes the barrier to entry way, way harder because, most places, studio wise, that are sizable, they're not even going to take any kind of pitch materials or scripts or anything unsolicited. And most of them, like, it's just listed right there on the website. Like, hey, you can contact us, but if you send us an email with any kind of materials, like, we are immediately trashing it. We're not even going to look at it. Because, at this point, you kind of either need a really strong referral from somebody who is connected to somebody else, or you're going to need like an agent that has connections to this place and is able to talk up a script and say, hey, this isn't a waste of your time. Check it out. And even then, it's like I've talked to a couple agents that are based in both New York and LA, and they've said, we have these awesome scripts that we totally love, and it's just, we'll send them to places like Fox at one time, or, Disney or Netflix and stuff, and it's just, even with the agency backing, these places are getting so many pitches and so many scripts that, it just really has to be like almost this elite level story and well polished script to get that sort of attention. And then even still, like it's such a fickle industry that the smallest of things can totally derail it. Let's say you get a director and then there's creative differences, or you get a producer and they have their own ideas that they're trying to throw into it. So there's just so many factors that really play out. When you break it down, it's pretty amazing that any film has ever been made, because it's such a balancing act from start to finish, that I think most people don't think about that side of it either. Is that it's like even when you feel like you're in the home stretch, you have financing, you're ready to go, there's still so many factors that just can play out throughout the entire process of getting a film made. It's kind of astounding.
Yeah, have you ever read Terry Rosio's writings on his website? I think it's wordplayer.com.
No, I haven't had a chance to read that. That sounds pretty cool, though.
Yeah, I would check that out. He's obviously the highest grossing screenwriter in human history. He
Mm-hmm.
wrote Shrek and Pirates and one of the Godzillas and Aladdin, The Lion King. I think he wrote a ton of things.
Wow.
He had a hand in a lot of things with his partner Ted Elliott as well, and
Okay.
he has the most honest blog about screenwriting that I've ever read in my life. He just details in insane depth how, what you're going to face, what you need to do, the kind of things that are going to be working against you, the kind of ways you can get screwed, even like you said, you're all the way to the finish line, and just as you're about to touch it, it all crumbles down and just disappears because of one little thing, one domino that got pulled
Mm-hmm.
away, and then nothing else can go forward. So, I would check it out. I recommend our listeners and everyone to check that out. It's if they're interested in learning about screenwriting and learning about contracts and how to read the fine print and the
Oh yeah.
language in the contract, because a lot of those also are tough. And he was just detailing the craziest issues, like multi-billion-dollar company like Disney was finding loopholes to keep him from earning royalties on toy sales. They
Oh
would
my
make the
goodness.
Black Pearl sales gray because in his screenplays he specifically said the Black Pearl is a pirate ship with black sails. So they would put gray sails on the toys so they didn't have to pay the man his
Wow.
royalties. Just crazy things like that you face. Yeah, so it's very in depth. There's a lot of language in there that people probably wouldn't understand if they don't know much about screenwriting or the film industry. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
terms will kind of fly over your head, but there is Google, so it is very interesting. I didn't mean to sidebar too much, but it's very eye opening. It's a little scary, but it's also helpful. So it's a really helpful um, guide if you are interested in learning as much about it as possible, or if you have scripts that you are trying to shop around. And they also do have a chat forum, so he actually has
Oh, cool.
answered a lot of questions that people have had, and they've shown him their treatments, and he's helped them tweak them. They've showed him their contracts, and he's kind of helped them translate the contract. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I would check it out if it's still running. It's like a 1998 website. It's it hasn't been updated, but I believe it's still running, and I believe he's still a little bit active on there. So yeah, that's a really
That's
interesting
awesome.
resource if anybody's interested.
Yeah, I mean, it has been really kind of like eye opening seeing from my own process, of just like with the one script I have, I had reached out to a producer and we had this amazing phone conversation. He was kind of like really excited about it and what it could be just from like the pitch deck. And, we were talking about like hitting up producers who had worked on that film, Minari. He like had connections with the people who like helped get that off the ground, and was just really gung ho and like had connections to HBO Max, and send the script over, and just kind of didn't hear from him after that. Unfortunately, one of those things where it was probably maybe something in the script itself that just either didn't resonate or maybe felt like was too dark of an element or something. But that's where I always say that's the fickle part, is it could be something as small as that, like just saying, oh, this gets into really dark territory. We don't really see where it might be able to make a big like return on our investment or things like that. It makes it really difficult. And so that's sort of like the nature that you're facing, is like you want to have this artistic outlet, but you also have to be cognizant of, what an audience is going to take to, what the tastes are right now for people. 'Cause I even, in my small sphere of people that I chat with and stuff, I've been sent scripts sometimes that, like, just read like something from a different era of filmmaking for the detriment of the kind of story itself. And, it's something that you kind of sit there and realize, like, this could be made, but, like, is it really going to happen? You don't know. So, like, that's also the reality of just, like, understanding, when you have an idea and when you have something that you're trying to shop around, like, is this in the right place at the right time? Do I maybe need to tweak this to, like, change an ending or change a plot story that's going to help me then to get, like, financing and stuff like that? So it's this weird, again, it's that balance of, like, artistic, integrity versus, having a business mindset and trying to get into an industry that is entirely fickle. And that's why I'd say one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten was, have multiple scripts. And that's sort of what inspired me to then, write the horror film that I've been working on, because you never know when you're having a conversation with someone, they might say, okay, you have this drama, that's cool, but, like, really right now I'm looking for a horror film. And then you're like, well, okay, I have a horror film, check it out. And that might be the thing that, gets that into the next step. So I always try to be, like, kind of hyper aware of, what people are looking for. And also, like, if I talk to somebody and they're not feeling one script, kind of maybe, bringing the conversation into, well, hey, I have this other thing. And like I said, I couldn't tell you how many times that's kept the conversation going and then has gotten, steps progressed with the production over this last, like, year and a half of really hardcore pitching and just outreach overall.
Yeah, definitely. You want to have a wheel of fortune, so
Yep.
you can just spin the wheel. Like if they don't like what you're saying, just say, "All right, well, what do you guys want?" Because
Mm-hmm.
I actually have exactly what you need. Just spin the wheel, and I'll give it to you. Do you want a comedy? Do you want a rom com? Do you want period piece? Do you want something contemporary? Do you want something more political drama, or do you want more of like a family thing? What do you guys want? Just spin the wheel. So having as
Exactly.
many possible different projects completed at once, I think, is the best way for anyone in any level of filmmaking to not be wasting their time, because time is the most valuable thing you have, because you could waste years on something that doesn't end up getting produced and made. So you could
Yep.
develop something for years, and if you bank everything on that, then, if it falls through, then you're picking up the pieces of your life in a way, not just your project or career. You poured your heart and soul and your life into this, and it's not happening, and you're gonna get evicted. So it's like,
Yeah.
have a bunch of different
Exactly.
things at once, and what would you leave people on? What would be like the biggest, like, final message you would want to send to film students, independent filmmakers, writers, anyone, and then also anyone who has to overcome something extraordinarily unfair too, as well, like a health condition or whatever, um, a, a death of a family member, or just something going on. It could be world events too, like a disease or giant virus that makes everybody have to be holed up in their homes. So what would the big final message be that you would try to give to everyone?
Yeah, I mean, as far as, like, just one kind of big message, I think it's easy to kind of have the cliche of just, like, believe in yourself and kind of don't give up on the dreams and stuff. Um, but I think kind of, it echoes what I've been, sort of mentioning about to this point, which is just, like, follow what you are passionate about and chase after, those things, and find those things that make you happy and really go after those. But also being aware of, you know, where things are going. Don't chase things, but chase things smartly, I guess, is kind of what I'm trying to say. If the dream is to be a huge Hollywood producer, you know, yes, LA is probably where you need to be, but don't just run out there and do things on a whim. You have to have plans as well in place. And there's times where you hear about like these celebrities that are out there and they were basically broke and then they had this harrowing rise to the top. It's like most of those are honestly the exception to the rule, not the rule. In reality, what it usually takes for most people is years and years and years and years of building up a network and getting people behind what you're trying to do and doing things the best that you can do them. Don't skimp on that part of it. I think a lot of people out there, and especially in the art field, can have this tendency to just kind of want to like rush through things or just kind of not put as much effort as they could. And, that shows at the end of the day, especially with something like writing. It's like you really just have to sit yourself down and like make it the best it can possibly be. Because you are standing in a crowd of a lot of people. So don't go into anything just like rashly, really think about what you're trying to do and do it in the best smart way you can. Don't ever just kind of do this whole blind jumps, because like I said, I think it's possible that you can kind of build something out of it, but I'd say, the better way to kind of go about life in general is just to, have a plan of attack. Strategy is the key and so many things. And, this whole scene of filmmaking and writing is no different than any of that.
Yeah, it's great advice, and it's very stoic. I like it. It's know thyself. So
Mm-hmm.
know who you are, know what you want, and know what you want to make, and then also have the wisdom to know, like you said, cautious recklessness. So, if you want to take
Exactly.
risks, do it, but don't derail everything on one mistake. Play your cards right, um, and yeah, gamble, but don't get addicted to the gambling. I think sounded like really good
Yeah,
advice.
that's really good. I like that. This is very true. Yeah, have the cards out on the table, but yeah, don't be rolling those dice like every 5 seconds, because yeah, it's just like I said. I think there are people that make it through those scenarios, but man, the amount of stories that you don't hear of everyone that sort of doesn't make it through those scenarios is like pretty astronomical. So always try to bear that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what should the listeners check out? Put your plugs in. I already read your books, but I want more people too. I thought they were very good. So yeah, just
Thank you.
throw everything out there. What are the titles, and where can they check out your films as well? Once they're out.
Yeah, so definitely go check out my debut novel, which is called Focus Puller. You can get that. It's available right now on Amazon, even for pre-order. If it's after June 6th, it will be totally available in both ebook and print copy. And then I'm hoping to kind of get it out there for indie bookstores and stuff like that. So who knows, if you frequent indie bookstores in your city, it might be on the shelves there as well. And then I have my last book, which was a poetry collection called Just a Boy Blaming Himself, which again, available on Amazon in both ebook and paperback format. And then, kind of check out my website, which is twotonyproductions.com. That's where I'll have, all of my film updates. It has like my past short films I've done, my music videos, stuff like that. But then it's also, I'm on there pretty much daily with a blog that I run that you can check out updates about other films, other indie filmmakers, other indie authors. So it's kind of this cool little like network of just being able to check out not only my stuff, but then the community as a whole, which has been a really cool kind of mission that I've been taking on the last like 2 years of just giving voice to a lot of people out there that are also doing really cool indie films and really cool books and stuff like that. So yeah, the website, check out the books, and I'm on Instagram, Twitter, all those good things too. It's all kind of connected from the website. So feel free to hit me up any of those places or just drop me a line through email or something like that. Always happy to chat more and sort of give any advice out to people out there as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone. This was Daniel Hess, a independent filmmaker, author, and overcomer of adversity. Thanks a lot for coming on, man.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a complete pleasure.
Oh, the pleasure was all mine. It was very good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.